Hey, this is Matt O'Leary, and this is a review of the new Kiran Leonard album, DEREVAUN SERAUN, or The End of Pleasure is Pain. There have been a ton of records this year I've wanted to review, but just haven't been able to because I've been so busy. This one I felt like I couldn't miss. And that's because Grapefruit from the English Kiran Leonard was my favorite album of last year. A volatile, reckless, heart-wrenching ride that just took me every single time. It's one of those experiences, one of those pieces of art that's just so powerful, so moving. You can't really mess with it too often, because it's just too much unless you brace yourself for impact. You can go back to my top albums of 2016 video to hear some more about it, but if I had to sell this guy with some labels, I'd say it's experimental rock, it's math rock, it's got some garage and some folk elements, it's got some Baroque characteristics with the strings and the arrangements, all with so many impassioned twists and turns. It's unorthodox and it's really bizarre at times, but it's so clearly sincere, so clearly coming from him. There's something very poignant about an artist that's so enveloped in their own stuff, so moved by their own stuff. He's clearly making what he feels is the most powerful. His voice can be harsh, it can be a little shrill, but there's always a tune there. It's not just guttural shouts like something from Metz or from some other noise rock band. And DEREVAUN SERAUN carries with it all those essential Kiran Leonard ingredients while tuning in more closely to the Baroque side of things. It's his voice, it's a piano, and it's a string trio. That's it. And if you've heard this guy play the bejesus out of the guitar, you're like me, like, what? No guitar? But there's an important distinction, I think, between artists that find their voice through an instrument and those that just use instruments to express their voice. This guy is clearly the latter. Musicality and creativity just overflows from him, just oozes from him. I mean, he was nutso on guitar. Pink Fruit, Don't Make Friends with Good People. These songs were classically tinged. They had time shifts all over the place. They had light speed chord changes. He practiced this instrument a lot. But this time he's doing many of the same things, but on piano. Magic fingers, bro. DEREVAUN SERAUN's a shorter album, each of the 5 tracks being based around a favorite piece of literature, from Henry Miller to James Joyce. And I haven't read any of them, so it's hard to judge how these plots, how these themes are being portrayed. But I do know that the first track he released from this thing, Living With Your Ailments, is based on a poem by Camus. Camus is often described as a nihilist philosopher, but I think he actually leans more towards an absurdist or absurdism. The chief distinction there being that nihilists believe there's no meaning inherent in the world, while absurdists believe that there may be meaning. It's still very godless, very anti-established religion, which Kiran mentions gleefully in the opening moments in the song. He sings about embracing the nothingness and finding freedom to live with a reckless abandon instead of a cynical depression. Personally, I am not on board. I believe pretty strongly that hopelessness is a natural response to a purposeless life. And honestly, I think it's delusion to try to force some sort of fulfillment when ultimately you don't have any hope in eternal meaning. I think an objective morality is evident in our world. But, this is the perfect example of loving someone's music while disagreeing with their ideas. Living With Your Ailment slowly builds with this syncopated piano line that keeps getting more dramatic and dramatic. Eventually, Kiran pulls up the vocal part into a higher range with an incredibly emotive performance, just like he always does. Dissonance will come in and come out, but we always return to this very proper string section that makes me feel like I'm at an elegant dinner party with the Queen. The next track is a little more contemplative. It's called A Particle of Flesh Refuses the Consummation. It's got this wholesome piano sound that veers off the tracks into this absolutely beautiful and intense chord change right at the end of a phrase. The second half of the 7-minute track lingers on one chord as the piano stutters and flutters around elusively. It's like you're fishing on a boat and you're looking down into the water and you see this little sparkle of color just zip by, and deep under the surface, and you're left, wondering. It was fast enough where it made you question whether it was just wishful thinking that made it appear. My favorite track on the record is the opener, Could She Still Draw Back? Low strings swell up and carry you through Kiran's narrative. I feel like I'm just hanging on his every word, even though I actually don't care what he's saying. And that falsetto free fall is beautiful. It never gets loud, it never gets bombastic, but I still feel this rise and fall throughout the song. I think that's in part because there's no consistent rhythm throughout the song. He's just pulling it along and slowing it down as the mood dictates. It's incredible musicianship, really. I mean, this guy is so underrated. Well, he's actually almost unrated. His music's got a theatrical quality to it, but I think it's the vulnerability he puts into every single performance, every single moment of every song that makes it so special. This one's not as grand a statement as Grapefruit, so naturally it's not quite as good, but it's a continuation of that quality. An 8 out of 10 for me, and a must listen for you. Say hello, Bear Bear.